Listen and subscribe to the GrowthCraft Startup Community Podcast on all the major podcast players, including iTunes, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and everywhere where podcasts are available. And leave a 5-star review if you like it. We need those reviews to grow the show, and it's the easiest way to help us grow the show that you can do right now. So head on over to iTunes, head on over to Google Podcasts or Spotify, and leave a 5-star review for the GrowthCraft Startup Community Podcast. And tell all of your friends who are entrepreneurs to take a listen. And thanks. Hello, my name is Jesan Sorrells. This is Tom Libby.
Welcome back, everyone.
And you are listening to the GrowthCraft Podcast. The GrowthCraft podcast is designed with the startup founder in mind. This podcast is committed to growing your connections to our GrowthCraft advisors, increasing your engagement with the GrowthCraft community overall, and we are committed to growing your knowledge about all the benefits that GrowthCraft can provide for your startup. We can't wait to bring you along on our journey today. Now, normally here on the podcast, we interview startup founders, advisors, and others about their journey, their process, and where they are, and how GrowthCraft fits into all of that. But today, we're doing something a little bit different, partially because we are currently in a cycle where we are grabbing new guests, and so there will be new guests and new episodes forthcoming on the other side of this episode. But we're also doing a little bit of a different thing today because we want to give you some updates about where GrowthCraft is, what GrowthCraft is doing. We want to talk to you about the growth of the podcast and, of course, encourage you to go out and tell all of your friends about it. So we're going to sort of structure a casual conversation here between myself and Tom, just providing you some updates about where we are and what we're doing on our project, which is, of course, the GrowthCraft Startup Community. So let's start off with this. How is the podcast doing, Tom? How are we doing here? How are you feeling about it? We're about 20 episodes or so in. As far as I'm concerned, we're only about 20% towards our goal of 100 episodes, because everybody knows you have to do the first 100 of something before it really begins to make a dent in the universe. So how are you feeling about where we are? And I can share some numbers with the folks if you'd like to, but how are we feeling about where we are right now?
Well, I think that's an awesome question because, first of all, so everyone knows, I don't know. I was told the numbers a few minutes ago, so I didn't know those numbers going into this conversation. But I will say, if you think about back when we started this, right? So we started recording these episodes back in May, I believe. Yeah, so back in the spring in May, with a launch date of July 1. So we were, we started talking to people and is this a good idea? Would you be willing to be a guest? All that stuff we kind of started in May. And as we started recording episodes, I felt like it was getting better and better and better, right? Like, and now we're getting feedback from people who are listening to these episodes going, I'm learning a lot, not just learning a lot about the GrowthCraft community, but just business in general, about people's journeys and how they've gone and what it was like and the ups and downs and left-hand turns and whatever, which I don't think you and I anticipated I don't think we anticipated that kind of feedback. I think what we were expecting was, I'm learning a lot about GrowthCraft. I'm learning a lot about how the community interacts, which, by the way, is also part of that feedback. So we did accomplish our goal in that sense. But I think there was just this added bonus of people coming to us after the fact going, I'm learning about business. I'm actually learning some things. It's helping me avoid roadblocks. It's helping me avoid obstacles that I can now see that I didn't see before. And I think that's exciting. I think that, so from a success perspective, I do agree with you that we're about 20% there because of the 100 episode push that we're trying to hit. But I think if I were to gauge it from just a sheer plus minus or pass fail situation, I think we're on the right path. I think we're passing this test.
Yeah. Well, and when you look at the metrics, which everybody likes numbers, and when you look at the metrics for downloads, metrics for subscribers over the course of the last 5 months. As Tom said, we launched officially in July. We were pre-recording episodes, and then we had a big dump. Well, not a big dump, but we've had a gradual dump over the course of the last 5 months. And now we're all caught up, and that's why we're in this new cycle that we're going to be entering. So from launch to today, we've actually got around 8 to 10 subscribers who regularly are subscribing to the show and are regularly downloading the show. So we do love that. Spotify is our number one place where most of our listeners are coming from. So if you're listening to us on Spotify, tell all your friends, give us a 5-star rating. We always say that. Our downloads are approaching the 500 mark. And so that's great. We love that. And so that's showing continuous growth. And the reality of podcasting, which this is a little inside baseball for folks. The reality of podcasting is that just like with blogging back in the early 2000s, almost nobody listens right at the beginning. And most podcasts don't go past 8 episodes. Even after 2020, with the explosion of social audio through applications. Remember Clubhouse? Remember that? Yeah. That we thought were all going to be big. And now we have large language models that we euphemistically call AI. All of this kind of stuff is occurring right now. And so it's never been easier to create a podcast, but it's never been harder to be consistent with it. And so consistency is the thing. And so dropping an episode every Tuesday, but you should be listening to it every Tuesday, and doing that once a week, every week, and doing that consistently is what allows podcasts to grow over the course of time. So when most people drop off, or most new podcasts drop off at 8, when they see numbers like ours, we're surging right on, and we're going to keep going because we believe in this project. And by the way, we've received almost 2/3 of our downloads within the last 30 days. So, we're experiencing a spike there in Spotify. We're also on Apple. We're on Google Podcasts. We're on all the major podcast players. But the big spot where we get most of our folks from, and most of our listeners and downloads from, is from Spotify. And so we thank you for that. That's a little bit about the podcast. Upcoming, we are going to be having our upcoming guests are going to be including our intellectual property advisor, Gil Perlberg. We're going to try to get him on. Charlie Pascal, who's our the GrowthCraft legal advisor, as well as future advisors who will be sitting in seats. Yeah, Tom.
We forgot Paul. I talked to him last night. I talked to him last night, and I asked him if he was just being shy, and he said no, he's just been busy. So I'll nail him down too. Paul's our infrastructure tech guy that deals with like internal technical communications and things like that. So
there you go.
Paul's, I don't think his name came up last time you and I spoke about this.
I don't think his name came up either. I was really thinking about Charlie and Gil, mostly because Charlie runs away from me every chance he can get. But don't worry. We're going to have a wild and woolly podcast there, because it's always our episode there, because it's always interesting talking to a lawyer. My mom was a lawyer. I've been surrounded by lawyers my entire life. A lot of my good friends are lawyers and doing a lot of different types of law. So I love talking to lawyers. It makes me all ooshy-gooshy inside.
All I could hear in the back of my mind is, I know things about lawyers. My mom, my best friend was a lawyer.
My best friend was a lawyer. I'm lawyer adjacent. Actually, you know what? It's weird, because people have asked me in my life, did you ever think about going to law school? And I said, no, the world does not need another lawyer.
I got the same question. My sister's a lawyer, so I get the same question.
Yeah, exactly.
And I also have a couple of friends that are lawyers.
So I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear from you. I don't want to hear it. Being ridiculous.
Anyway, moving on.
All right. So that's a little bit about the podcast. It's a little bit of the inside baseball, a little bit of things that are upcoming. Speaking of advisors, we just interviewed Vitaly Schaefer. So he was on episode number 19, and he is a venture capital and private equity and technology banking director at Leader Bank, and he is serving as a GrowthCraft advisor in our banking seat. But do we have some other updates about advisors that are coming up?
We do well, so not that detailed, but we do have at least a couple of things on the block, right? Meaning, so right now, what we're missing from an advisor perspective, and what we're expecting to bring on in the at least the near future would be like an HR and an HR professional, talent acquisition. I think we have, but I think we're going to be re-engaging with that person. So there might be a follow-up podcast episode or something like that with Cheryl. We have insurances, whether it's regular health insurance, dental, vision, all that stuff that you would, if you're a startup and you're thinking about offering those benefits to your employees, you're going to need to have somebody to talk to about that. It's in wealth management was another one that we were talked about recently, about bringing on somebody, because a lot of times we're starting these startups with exits in mind, and if you're not thinking about exit already in your startup, then you might want to talk to somebody that is going to tell you that you should be thinking about exits. So we do have some additional additional advisors that we're thinking about pulling on. I think that's going to come in the very early part of 2024.
Now, we have not interviewed each other on the podcast.
That is true.
So we should probably throw that in the mix as well. I mean, I ramble incoherently here every week. And then Tom is, of course, loquacious and always pleasant to listen to, and always asks really sharp and incisive questions, which is good.
And here I was thinking I was the comic relief.
Well, so we'll both interview each other. So that should be interesting. Or maybe we should get a third person on to interview us.
Oh, that would be fun, like a guest host almost.
Yeah.
I think there's a couple of people that would be actually eager to jump in to do that. I know one in particular that I know he would say yes if we asked him. So
yeah,
that might be fun. Yeah, that might be fun.
Yeah, that might be a good time. Yeah, it'll be sort of a little bit of. So I'm a big fan of the and Tom and I have talked about this. I'm a big fan of the HBO show, the old HBO show, The Larry Sanders Show, starring Gary Shandling. If you've never seen it, it's on Max. It's no longer HBO Max; it's just Max now.
Yeah.
So if you have the Max app, you should watch it. It is excellent. It's one of those meta shows like Arrested Development or Modern Family, but like in the 1990s. And so Gary Shandling plays a television host in the mode of Johnny Carson or David Letterman or Jay Leno, a late night talk show host.
Conan for you O'Brien. Younger people, Jimmy Fallon
or Seth Meyers. I hear hosts a show somewhere doing something. Anyway, it's a little bit of a behind the scenes kind of thing, and I'm a big fan of it. I always giggle like a very pleased individual when I watch it. But somebody coming in and interviewing us would be like me being interviewed on my own show. Be a little bit meta there.
So, that'd be kind of funny. Yeah, I'd be into that. We'll discuss that again some more.
We'll work our way. We'll work our way through that. Okay, so we've been running a couple of different programs for the GrowthCraft community, the Founders Forum and the expert workshops. I'll be honest. We were taking notes before this episode. I kind of got those two confused in my head. So kind of walk through what the difference is for people who are listening, who want to attend, or if they're thinking about joining GrowthCraft, what is the benefits of going to a Founders Forum versus an expert workshop? Like, what's the difference between those two? Kind of walk us through that a little bit.
Sure. So I think some of the first things first, like let's talk about the Founders Forum. Like, we'll talk one at a time, of course, right? So Founders Forum, the idea or concept of this is basically bringing the community together in almost like a roundtable format, right? Where you can talk through some issues, problems, and whatnot. But it's kind of morphed into this really cool event where you have 20, 25 people, 30 people, however many people are in the forum. You're having this overall open discussion, and then you break out into these breakout sessions where you can take that simple discussion and go really deep into it for a good portion of time. Then you come back to the main group and you start talking about what you've learned throughout that process and some of the answers, solutions, whatever, came about. And the interesting thing that it seems to, even myself, who's been in business for quite a while, I've owned my own company for quite a while. I still never fail to learn something new from either another founder or even one of our own advisors that are in a particular field, because there's a lot of cross-pollination going on in these types of meetings, which I think leads to comfort and like some that internal warmth you feel when you feel like you're on the right path, like my business really should succeed this or go forward. So I think the Founders Forum is really cool. Now the unique part about it is the Founders Forum is only for our members, which I don't think we talked about on the podcast yet, but one thing I'd like to just throw in there, like under the radar here, is we launched GrowthCraft, a soft launch back in the spring of this year. So 2023, the spring of 2023, I think it was like March or April-ish when we took on our first members into the community. And we've grown the community steadily without any real marketing or efforts on the external part to up to about 80 members now. So we have about 80 members in our startup community right now. And all of them interact in different ways, which I think is very cool. But the Founders Forum gives us a way to bring all of them into one kind of event, right? But so you have to be a member to be involved. The expert workshops, shifting over to the expert workshops, is exactly what it sounds like. You get an expert or an advisor in a field of business functionality, whether it's leadership or sales and marketing or finance or legal or whatever the disciplines of business that you're talking about. And they structure a workshop for the startup community that is useful, tangible, excited. Like you actually learn something that you can physically use in your business today. It's not something that you have. One of my frustrations when I see these, because by the way, you can find a ton of workshops free on the internet. You can go online and find a million workshops that are free. And my biggest pet peeve of those workshops is they're basically a long, drawn out sales process, right? They're basically pitching you something. I'm an IP expert. I'm going to tell you these one or two little tiny things that are going to entice you to click on the button at the end of this workshop, and you're going to engage with me, and I'm going to try to sell you my services. The wonderful thing about GrowthCraft's workshops is that is not what's happening. We are giving you real advice, real information, real world stuff, real world experience, and we're giving you things that you can go and use in your business today. We're not looking for this is not a sales pitch where there's a button at the end of it and you're going to say, click here for more information or click here to schedule a time with me to go into more detail. It's not like that. It's real, it's legit, and it's useful to people. And the workshops are not just for our members. So we're getting to the point now where we feel comfortable extending that invitation to other startups in the startup world, right? So it's not just the 80 members here. We're going to be producing them. We're going to be pushing them out to anybody who wants to join us, at least for one or two free, right? That'll be the sales pitch. The sales pitch will be, come join GrowthCraft, right? But it's not really, it's not a sales pitch to sign up for my services personally. It's to join a full-fledged community that can help you.
Join the GrowthCraft startup community online via Zoom each first Tuesday of the month at 4:30 p.m. Eastern Time for Expert Tuesdays. With Expert Tuesdays, you'll hear from one of our top-notch expert advisors and thought leaders in an informative workshop or presentation focusing on a topic important to emerging and growing companies. From sales and marketing to storytelling and leadership, in this hour-long monthly session, you will be able to connect with the GrowthCraft community, advisors, founders, and others. And you'll learn entrepreneurship skills you can apply to your startup project right now. Check out the links to the GrowthCraft website to join us on Expert Tuesdays in the show notes below the podcast player you're listening to right now. And thanks. Well, and that idea of giving value, right, I think is so important because how many things that you get for free, whatever that may mean, where your attention or your awareness is the currency that content is buying. And in exchange for your awareness, in exchange for your attention, you're not being given anything of value in exchange beyond maybe, like you said, a sales pitch, or at best, maybe being entertained for, 15, 20 minutes. And by the way, entertainment even doesn't hold people because that's why we put advertising inside of entertainment. That's what pays for the entertainment. But this idea of giving value, this idea of providing value, not just to the community of 80 members, but also providing it to a much larger area as the enticement, I really like that. And I've done an expert workshop myself and tried to provide value there. I've been to Tom's expert workshop where he talked about the practicalities of sales and marketing. I know that, speaking of Charlie, I know that our league advisor, Charlie Pascal, I know he's got an expert workshop coming up I believe in the spring, that he's going to be doing. And of course, I've got another expert workshop coming up with our other advisor, Kevin, where we're going to be talking about leadership and mindset and assessment and things like that. But that thing that we are all pushed to deliver as advisors, or pushed to deliver that value, I think that's very, very critical, and make it more than just a sales pitch. I would love for you to buy my leadership book, but I would love it more if you would watch this, if you would attend this expert workshop and get something out of the workshop that you could actually use.
Yeah, it's very gratifying too, right? Like, even
Yeah.
from my perspective, because it can't always be about business. It can't always be, well, it can't be about it can't always be about me earning business. It has to be about there's a small part of me that just wants to give back anyway, right? I just
Right.
want to, I've been in sales and marketing for a long time. I've run a sales and marketing consulting firm for the last 10 years. Trust me when I tell you, I know there are some roadblocks that you're going to hit that I can help you through without engaging with me on a consulting basis, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's just some commonalities that you want to get out there and just try to help people, because quite honestly, as a sales and marketing consultant, I don't want you paying me to jump over to jump over bunny hops when I want to get you over hurdles, right?
Right.
Like, that's
Yeah.
that's where I want you to pay me for. That's where I get excited about being paid. I get excited about being paid about solving big problems, not getting you over these little roadblocks that I know that if you worked hard enough, you could probably figure out on your own, but I
Mm.
could just help you get there faster, and I could do it for you for free through the community.
Yeah.
I'm very happy to do that. I get excited about stuff like that.
Yeah. What problems can we solve? And that's also, just to talk a little bit about the Founders Forum. I have watched the Founders Forum shift as you're talking about it, and that idea of getting 10 to 15 people together, dividing up into small groups, really having an intimate discussion about a particular topic that might be very important to a startup at that particular moment, or that might just be a general topic that, again, is something that if I had the input from my peers, I could just solve myself. That's the value of the Founders Forum. I mean, I think the last one that I attended, we talked about, if I remember correctly, it was mental health issues, I think.
Oh, right.
As a startup founder, and that's something that startups don't. Well, it's something that entrepreneurs in general don't talk about. Startup founders in particular don't talk about, and it is one of those things that, if you are suffering from anxiety, depression, suicidal ideation, or if you're just really, really stressed all of the time in your startup, and you are really, really stressed all of the time in your startup, then how are you handling that? And how is that impacting other people around you? And finding out from other founders what they have done in the past, and how they've dealt with that. I mean, to Tom's point, I've, been running my own leadership development consultancy for 10 years myself. And, trust me when I say you will have anxiety. You will have moments of peak sort of depression. And I'm not talking about a clinical diagnosis, something like that. That's a different kind of thing. I'm talking about, waking up at 3 o'clock in the morning in a cold sweat on a Wednesday, knowing that payroll is on a Friday, and you don't have enough cash to cover payroll. And you will have those moments. And the advice of other people around you, that's something that I wish I had. And being able to have that trust with other folks in the community is something that we deliver with the Founders Forum. So,
Sure.
yeah, I like both those programs. I like to see both of them expand. I think they will, as we bring in more members. Speaking of which, so let's kind of round the corner here. Membership models. So we here at GrowthCraft are kind of shifting around how we think about how folks interact with the community and what that actually looks like. And of course, the value that we provide, not only to the community, but also to people coming into the community. And we're in the process right now of constructing a survey designed to go out to our current members to figure out how we're going to cross this, boat. As Peter Thiel would have said back in the day, from 0 to 1. how are we going to go from 0 to 1? And right now, our 0 for us is the community is free. The community costs you nothing as a founder. You come in, you go through an onboarding process, you're brought into the community, and then you can begin to experience, after taking an assessment, all of the pieces, all of the elements that we've been talking about today: advisor access, founders forum, expert workshops, podcasts. You can take advantage of all of that. The tragedy of our world, or the reality of our world, though, is that nothing runs for free. And so we've got to think about how to shift that model around. And we're surveying our community. I want to talk a little bit about that to figure out what their thoughts are around this. But why don't we talk a little bit about sort of what are we thinking about as far as models of membership, because this is all still up in the air, and where are we at with our survey? What does our survey basically ask?
So it's all pretty interesting.
It is pretty interesting. And I don't want to go too deep into the inside baseball. I want to keep this very 50,000 foot.
Yeah.
But.
So at the 50,000 foot level, where essentially we're going to be asking our community members, what value would you put on this, right? Like if we were to flip this community to a paid model, like right now, would you pay X or would you pay Y? And if not, tell us why, right? Because we're also looking for information. Now, if we get an overwhelming yes, we would pay for this, and this is the dollar amount, I think our answer or our direction is pretty clear, right? If we get no, we would never pay for this, I don't know why you guys are surveying this, then either A, we have the wrong community, or B, we don't have enough value to them. So again, we learned something through the survey. I think regardless of what we do learn from the survey, there's going to be some shifts. I think we're going to move some pieces around, and we definitely are going. We want to offer a bit more value than we do right now. And again, what you just described sounds like it's already a tremendous amount of value, but we're going to be adding things to that value so that we can get some sort of premium model out of this, like some sort of premium model, and things like, and some of these things are things that companies look for and pay a lot of money for, by the way. Like, for example, like a mastermind group. Like I don't know if you've ever seen them or been involved with them, but I've been involved with a couple of them, and they're extraordinarily valuable. It takes the founders forum puts the founders forum on steroids, right? So instead of getting random 20 people that you break out into breakout sessions, you get the same group of people that you actually learn to trust with your business, and you start talking through problems because you all have different levels of experience, and you can actually solve some stuff with each other. And then you find value in each other's relationships. And there's a lot of great things that come out of mastermind groups. There's things like, getting free opportunities to talk with advisors one-on-one. There's things, things like that, where you could you get your startup up and off the ground, you're hiring new people, but you have no idea how to manage them or grow your leadership level, which you can talk to Jesan for free. I want to ask you very pointed questions about, what do I do with this, how do I deal with that, and you can get that opportunity through a more valued premium member service. And then you got there's a bunch of other things. I can go on. There's probably a list of about 4 or 5 additional things that we want to add to this, but that's going to be part of the survey as well. Here's a couple of extra things we want to add. What would you put value on this? Like, how would you value this as well? So, and again, it's still early off. I know that we're still early off here, but those are some of the things coming down the pipe that we're going to be trying to institute in 2024. There's some partnership agreements that we're looking at from other organizations that we're going to be able to pull in to give you some free version of things there. So that as we start to charge a little bit of money for, and I mean a little bit, folks, we're not talking about thousands of dollars here. We're talking about definitely in the hundreds or less. But it's, as we start charging, we still want to give that added value of certain things staying free. So there's partnerships that we're going to leverage to do that. So we're pulling in from a lot of different resources to make sure that people get a pure aggregated business resource in GrowthCraft, that it becomes a holistic, pure business resource for startups.
Join us online via Zoom at the GrowthCraft Startup Community Founders Forum each third Tuesday of the month at 4:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Look, advisors and founders, we're all in this together. Building relationships with your peers in entrepreneurship is just as important as connecting with experts and advisors. Each month, every third Thursday, we'll meet online via Zoom to share ideas, get support each other, and talk about universal issues that nearly all startups share. We'll celebrate our victories, chat about challenges, and then break out into small groups to address a timely topic of interest. It's a great way to meet like-minded entrepreneurs. Check out the links to the third Tuesday events on the GrowthCraft website and join us at the GrowthCraft Startup Community Founders Forum in the show notes below the podcast player you're listening to right now. Well, and we're also redesigning our website. We're in the process of doing that now on the back end and having those discussions. We're still in the discussion / wireframe stage. And so you'll see some of this roll out, as Tom said, on the other side of January 1, and begin to see some shifts and some changes and some movement visually in our marketing of the GrowthCraft startup community. And of course, on the back end and the platform that we are on, you'll also begin to see some shifts and some movement around, not significant, but enough to basically show you that, hey, this is something that we're serious and we're committed to. So in thinking about this kind of shift in membership and the shift in membership model, the offerings that we're going to be having and not necessarily the price point, but the offerings that we're going to be having, is there going to be an increase in the ability for members of the community to actually engage more with advisors in really specific ways? Is there going to be more opportunities for that?
Yeah, I think three in particular come to my mind, right? Like the one will, of course, the mastermind group. I think as we add mastermind groups, we're going to pull in other advisors to run them. So it's not always going to be myself. I'm not the only one capable of running mastermind groups. So in that case, it's like a twofold, right? You get the advice and wisdom of a experienced consultant, an experienced advisor, along with a few peers. So I think that's going to be a big one. I also think the office hours of being able to schedule time, like very specific time with people, and goes throughout all of the advisors. So all 15 of the current advisors right now. And again, each one of us represent a completely different facet of business. So if you wanted to take the opportunity to talk to every one of us, go for it. You could really accelerate your business if you start, going down the list of, I want to talk to legal. I want to talk to IP strategy. I want to talk to leadership. I want to talk to sales and marketing. You can talk to all these people at no additional charge for a good half hour to an hour. Some people are offering an hour. Some people are offering a half an hour, but still 30 to 60 minutes free advice with somebody who actually knows what they're doing and has real world experience on it is invaluable to me. I mean, and again, these are office hours that are going to be month over month. So you could schedule, like say you're just talking, you want to talk to Jesan and I from a leadership and sales and marketing perspective. You get Jesan this month, me next month, Jesan the month after, and just get the questions more and more pointed so you can figure out some stuff. I think that's extremely valuable. And then the third one is going to be a more of an open source kind of round robin kind of feel to it, where we're calling it Ask Me Anything from an advisor. So I will host. It's not going to be a workshop. It's going to be an open discussion forum where any one of our members can join the webinar or the conference call or whatever the Zoom call is, and just start talking sales and marketing. Let's talk about it. What are you facing? And again, it's not, it's going to be specific to sales and marketing because I'm going to be the advisor that is going to be head of the class, so to speak. But I'm not restricting who's going to be there. So any one of our members can be there. By the way, sales and marketing. So also our advisors, if you want to join, come on and join. I can help you out.
Yeah, absolutely.
It doesn't have to be because, there's a couple of our advisors that have picked my brain too. Again, I go back to, it's really more about giving back and being able to allow, from a scalability perspective, open up the doors to let as many people in as possible to answer questions for. So those are the three that first come to mind. I know there's others, but those are the three that really jump to the front of the line for me.
Well, I'm always skimming Tom's brain, rest assured, here on the back end. I don't pick his brain, I skim it. Just a little gloss off the top. He's got so much information to give around sales and marketing.
He wants me to leave, so he wants to leave some for
I want to leave some for everybody else because I don't want to be greedy. Share the tragedy of the commons of Tom Libby's mind. We don't want to commit that.
That sounds like a Shakespeare play. The tragedies. Anyway, sorry.
That's what we'll call this section of the podcast. that's how it'll go down in the show notes. The tragedy of the commons of Tom Libby's mind. But we want to really, and I think Tom really makes this point really, really well. We want to make sure that when you go to growthcraft.org, when you sign up to be a part of the community, when you refer other folks to the community, not only can you describe the value that you're getting from the community, but you can also get excited about it, right? And you can really become more engaged with the GrowthCraft community and use that engagement, leverage that engagement to grow your project, grow your entrepreneurial startup mission, and to really stay focused on your vision and goals as you move forward throughout this wild and woolly time that we are all in now. As it says on the website, speed to funding, speed to market, and speed to scale, and that's something that we're looking to get to you. Oh, this seemed like a good wrap up / summary show. Is there anything else that maybe we want to drop on the folks that we haven't discussed so far?
I can't think of anything other than the fact that I'm thinking we might be a little early for this, but I'm thinking we do this every year around the end of November, right? Like there's like a recap episode where we can talk about the good, bad, and the ugly, things that happen, what's on the future. I think the end of November seems to be a good time frame to do this pretty consistently as we go forward.
I will tell you, typically in my business, I try to do an end of the year meeting with all my partners and everybody. Been doing that consistently for a number of years. Sometimes it winds up being in December, other times it winds up being in January, but it's always sort of around there. And I think that's a perfect idea for the podcast as well. And so yeah, I think we can institute something like that. At least as long as I'm hanging around.
I mean, it's our podcast. We can do whatever
we do what we want as long as we're hanging around. Now, if they bounce us, well, who knows what'll happen next?
Then you guys are all on your own.
Exactly. Yeah, the format changes will commence until morale improves. So, with that, I would like to thank Tom, and of course, thank myself. Just like Snoop Dogg, I would like to thank me.
How about I thank you, Jesan? You're welcome, and I thank you. How's that?
Thank you, and you're welcome. And thank you all for listening to the GrowthCraft podcast. We're out. Each second Thursday at 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time, join GrowthCraft live and in person at Second Thursdays at CIC, located at 1 Broadway, Cambridge, Massachusetts. Located at Kendall Square, CIC features the most engaging entrepreneurial community in the Northeast, right next to MIT and minutes from Harvard University and downtown Boston. With 250,000 square feet of professionally managed flexible workspace, CIC has every office amenity you could possibly need to scale your startup project. For those of you who are local, or if you're just visiting Boston, GrowthCraft advisors and founders can meet others in our community face-to-face. Join us for an informal social and informational get-together. Meet others, chat with advisors and peers, make connections, and then stay for Venture Cafe, starting at 4:30 p.m. Eastern every second Thursday at CIC. Check out the links to the GrowthCraft website to join us live and in person at Second Thursdays at CIC in the show notes below the podcast player you're listening to right now. And thanks.